Okay, then besides autoscaling, the last thing we need besides the ELB is Cloudwatch. And as I mentioned, Cloudwatch is a service that does real-time monitoring of metrics. Now, EC2s and ELBs have default metrics that they already send to Cloudwatch automatically. The ELB will send the latency in the request. So in other words, the ELB is timing a request it sends to the instances and how long it takes before a response comes back. And it's timing that, and it's going to send the average to Cloudwatch. The EC2s are going to send their CPU utilization numbers. Okay, so they're going to say they're 50% utilization or 60% or whatever they are, and that they're going to be averaged across the group, and that's going to become a metric that Cloudwatch will monitor, our average CPU utilization. If there's anything else we want to monitor that's not collected by default, we create what's called a custom metric. And we can do that by actually making API calls from our instances to Cloudwatch to put data points in Cloudwatch. Things like memory utilization is a good example of a custom metric. Once we have metrics in Cloudwatch, we can configure alarms, and we're going to use those with autoscaling to say, hey, it's time to scale out, or hey, it's time to scale back in. Other things Cloudwatch can do, which is not really related to what we're doing here, is it can be used to collect log files from your instances. So you could have an agent installed on your EC2 instances that could stream application log files, server log files, Apache log files, whatever you want, into Cloudwatch, and Cloudwatch will collect those log files in a centralized repository, but it'll also allow you to monitor those log files in real time, and you could create metrics from the log file entries. So for example, I could create a metric known as HTTP status code, right? And I could monitor that metric, and every time it's a 400 or 500 error, I could count that and maybe throw up alarms or things like that. In addition to Cloudwatch, we also have another service called CloudTrail, which is for logging AWS service API calls. And you could feed your CloudTrail logs into Cloudwatch so that it can monitor those logs as well and tell you that you've got configuration changes happening and stuff like that. And Cloudwatch also has a dashboard where you can customize and actually log in and see metrics like how CPU utilization history has been going up and down and that type of thing. Okay, so with autoscaling, we have to say the policies, which are how many instances we're going to add or take away when an alarm is going off. So the scale out policy, in our example, is going to respond to our high CPU utilization alarm. We can tell it to add 1 or add 2 instances, whatever we want. And the scale in policy is going to be tied to a low CPU utilization alarm. When, say, we drop below an average of 20 or 10% utilization, we can start terminating instances because we don't need as many. Okay. All right, so let's do the autoscaling group. This one's going to take a little while to do. It's got a lot of steps. So let's dig into it. All right, before we go on, I just want to create a second security group, okay? And that's because my instances that the autoscaling is going to run are not going to need that HTTP rule, okay? They're going to get their own traffic from the ELB directly and not from the internet. So we're going to create a second security group. Okay, I'm going to click on create security group, and this one I'm going to call S3 upload SG. Right, demo VPC. Okay, now we need to go and set the rules. And I'm going to, first of all, add some rules. First, I'm going to create an SSH rule. Actually, I don't need that. Sorry. Oh, I'll put it anyway, just show you how you do it. Put my IP address in there again. It's actually not going to work though, is it? Because I don't have permissions for this. Okay, so let me explain how this is going to work. This is going to be a private subnet, so these are not going to be reachable from the internet, so I won't be able to SSH into them. So what I would do, which I don't want to extend the demo and show you, is I would create another instance and I would launch it in the public subnet and I would call it a bastion instance or jump box. So what I would do is I would SSH into that instance, and then from that instance I would SSH into this one, these in the autoscaling group. So I would put here the IP address of the bastion instance, or I could put the security group. Now this is probably the easiest thing to do. So what I'm going to do is call it public web SG security group, and I'm going to launch that bastion in with that same security group. So that bastion instance will allow me to connect from it to these instances with SSH. Okay, now I'm going to add another rule, of course, for the HTTP traffic, but this is not going to be open to the internet. This is going to be opened to the ELB security group only, again, which is the public web SG. Okay. All right, and I'm going to save that. Okay, so now I've got the second security group added. So let's go and do the auto-scaling stuff. Click on Autoscaling Groups, and then create Autoscaling Group. Okay, so it tells you on the screen there's actually two parts to this, creating the launch configuration and then creating the Autoscaling Group. So I'm going to click on Create Launch Configuration. Okay, now what is the launch configuration again? It's going to look a lot like what I did when I launched my EC2 instance, because what I'm doing is telling the autoscaling group, right, this is my launch configuration of the instance that I want you to launch. However, there's going to be a big difference. Right here, I don't want to launch the base AMI. I want to launch the custom AMI that I created that has my application on it. So I'm going to pick select here. Okay, now this next one, it could be any instances that I want. I could use T2 micros if I want, or I could pick any of these other instances. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to pick an M3 medium just for so. And then I'll click Configure Details. Okay. Now here, I'm going to call this launch configuration a particular name. Let's see what I'll call it. S3 upload. Launch config, right? I want to make sure that all my instances have my role that I created. Okay. Now this next part is optional, but I recommend it. What this means is that if I choose Cloudwatch detailed monitoring, Cloudwatch will receive metrics every 1 minute. If I don't pick that, then it's only going to receive metrics every 5 minutes. Okay. There's nothing really under advanced details that we need to worry about. So we're just going to click on Next, Add Storage. Okay. And I'm fine with the choice of the standard storage. So I'm going to click Configure Security Group. Okay. And here I've already created a security group. So I'm going to pick my security group that I just created. Click Review. Okay. And then I'm going to click on Create Launch Configuration. All right, this is asking me for a key pair. So when I want to launch into the instances, so I'll choose my S3 upload key and then create launch configuration. Okay, we're done with the launch configuration. So the next thing is to create the auto scaling group. And in this case, I'm going to call this S3 upload ASG, right? And I'm going to tell it to start with 2 instances. Okay, so when this auto scaling group launches, gets created, it's going to launch 2 instances right out of the gate. Okay, I'm going to make sure I put demo VPC here, right? And now I want to say which subnets I want the auto scaling group to launch instances into. So I'm going to pick private subnet 1 and private subnet 2. You just have to click on the box and then you get those drop downs. Okay. Now this next step is very important. I don't know why it's under advanced details. It's kind of critical. Click on advanced details and then check this box, receive traffic from one or more load balancers. Okay. And then I need to pick my target group that I created. All right. Now for health checks, I could choose to let the EC2 do its own health checks, or I could choose the ELB health check that I created before. I like the health check that I created before because it's checking my index.php file. So I'm going to pick that particular option, and I'm going to also pick Cloudwatch detailed monitoring. Okay. Health check grace period. This is how long before it continues to check. So I'm going to say 100 seconds. Next, configure scaling policies. Okay, now this one is where I want it to scale up and down, so I'm going to choose this option. I'm going to put a minimum of 2, and again, the maximum, it doesn't really matter. Let's just put 6 for now. It could be a higher number, like 20. It doesn't really matter. It's there just to protect you from things going way out of control. Okay, now the next part is going to be to set up the alarms and to trigger auto-scaling actions. Now, they've recently streamlined this a bit, so you can let them configure it from here. But I think you should know how it's done because you get more control this way. So you click this link down here and it will change the screen to give you controls to configure the alarms and stuff like that. So I'm going to create an alarm for scaling out to increase the group size. And I'm not going to bother with a notification each time that the auto-scaling group scales out, because that could be quite often. I don't want to get annoyed by tons of emails. Okay, what I'm going to do is create an alarm that says when the average of the CPU utilization metric is greater than or equal to, say, 70%, right, for at least one consecutive period of 1 minute, because I want to show you this quickly. I don't want to wait any time. And then I'm going to call this alarm high CPU utilization. Doesn't matter if it's not spelled right. And then click create alarm. Okay. This is the warm-up period. This would be how long we're allowing for instances to take to become active and ready to be used. I'm going to put about 100 seconds in there. Okay. Now I'm going to go down and do the same thing for scaling in. So in this case, uncheck the notification. I'm going to say that I want this alarm to go off if my CPU utilization average drops below 20. Okay. For at least, I don't know, let's make this longer because we don't want to scale in very aggressively. 2 periods of 5 minutes, and I'll call this low CPU utilization. And then create alarm. All right. We're ready to remove. Okay, here I got to take the action. In this case, I'm going to add 1 instance when the high CPU utilization alarm goes off, and remove an instance when the low one goes off. Okay, I think we're ready to click on configure notifications. We don't need any notifications. Tags, sure, I'll give it a tag. This means all my instances are going to have this tag that gets launched by autoscaling. Then I'll click review and create autoscaling group. Okay, that is doing it. All right, so if I go to instances now, 2 instances are starting up. That's our autoscaling group that kicked that off. Okay. Now this is going to take a few minutes for them to come online, right? But I should get ready with my load balancer's DNS name, right? Because this I'm going to put in my browser to see my application running. So I'm going to get that and copy that. And again, this is going to take several minutes to get ready, but you know, whatever. We'll just put it up in the browser and wait. Okay, so this is probably not going to show anything for a little bit here. It's already got the Apache from the instances running, and we'll get ready with the rest of it in a second here. Okay, again, I'm not confident that it's going to be ready yet, but we'll just wait for a second here and give it a couple chances. Oh, okay, there we go. So now our application is running on the instances that were launched by the Autoscaling Group. Okay, not too bad, right? Not too bad. Okay, so if I go back here, we'll see that we have our Autoscaling Group. We can see activity history, that it launched 2 instances, and you could see the instances, and they're marked healthy. Okay. Now, what I could do here, we don't want this one, that's the other one. What I could do here is I could run a load test on this. Now, I've actually loaded a load test script in that package that I had in my demo application. I had another file in there called load auto, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and try to force it to bump the CPU utilization way up. Okay. All right, so that's running right now. Now, it's going to take a few minutes for this to detect that the CPU utilization has gone really high. But after it does, you know, then we're going to start getting alarms and things like that, and then we're going to have new instances added to the group automatically. Okay, so this right now is probably beginning to freak out. You can go to Cloudwatch if you want to see some of this stuff. I'll just type Cloudwatch here. You can go in here and you can see the alarms. Okay, right now, high CPU utilization alarm is okay. Low CPU utilization alarm is not, is still waiting for enough data, but this will soon, this high CPU utilization alarm will soon go into the alarm state. Okay, it has to notice my alarm is checking only every minute, so we have to wait for that to go by. Okay, it's set to trigger when it gets to 70%. I'm just going to run this a couple times to get it really to load up. Okay, and this will become an alarm. When that becomes an alarm, a couple new instances will start getting launched. Okay, we have to wait again for all this to happen here. But maybe we should keep on moving and then come back to it in a second. Yeah, I think we'll come back to this and see how many instances are running in a few minutes. So we don't want to hold up because we're already at 4:20. So let's keep on going, then we'll come back.